You're listening to the Play Like a Girl podcast, episode number 29.
You play ball like a girl!
I'm Nikki B with Play Like a Girl, made just for female athletes.
I can be a girl in a man's game, a diamond in the dirt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Play Like a Girl podcast. I'm your host, Nikki B. Here at Play Like a Girl, we aim to encourage more confidence in young women who play sports and give them the necessary tools and advice to have an amazing career in sports and beyond. If you are a young woman who plays sports and lives an active lifestyle, or you know one of these young women, I am so excited you are here. Each week, we'll either bring you a guest in the sports world or have a roundtable discussion of the many taboo and important topics in the world of female sports. Are you with me? Let's change the game. All right, Plag listeners, today's guest is an Olympic weightlifter, Morghan King. Morghan competed in the 2016 Rio Olympics, breaking an American record, and is now on her way to qualifying for the 2020 Olympics. She played all sports growing up, went on to play Division II college soccer, then turned to triathlons and marathons post-college. When she decided she didn't like training solo, she turned to CrossFit, which led her to her Olympic weightlifting journey. She gives us great advice about playing more than one sport growing up, community and communication, and enjoying the journey and process. So please give a warm Plag welcome to our guest, Morghan King. Well, hello, Morghan. I am so excited to talk to you today, so thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. So I don't think we've had a weightlifter before. We've had a wrestler, but not a weightlifter. So I'm so excited to talk to you and just learn more about what you do and who you are. But before we dive into all the other stuff, we do something with our guests, which is some rapid fire questions. So are you ready?
I think so. Uh-oh. Okay.
They're easy. They're easy.
Sweating, so it's fine.
Okay. First one, where do you currently live?
I live in Atlanta, Georgia right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Seattle, Washington.
Cool. What sports did you play growing up?
Oh my gosh, I don't think there was a sport that I didn't play. Mostly it was track and soccer, but I definitely played all of the sports growing up, and I had an older brother, so
Cool.
always wanted
Love
to be
that.
him. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What is your favorite quote?
Oh my gosh. I'm like a big quote person, so there's
What's your
probably
favorite one
not
right
one.
now?
I think the one about Mia Hamm where she says, I'm obviously gonna botch it a little bit, but the idea of it is she works really, really hard, and then at the right time she lights a match. And so it's like, you're constantly just like working for that right moment. And then when it all comes together, it's like a beautiful thing. And I just kind of, with training all the time, you kind of have to remember that part. So that one kind of sticks with me. And obviously being a former college soccer player and, all of that, she was kind of a badass in my time. So still is, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that you just said that because it's so true. I was just listening to something and it was talking about how you can't compare, like everyone looks at Beyonce now, or everyone looks at, like all the athletes now, but you don't see all the years and the days of hard work that they had to put in. So it's kind of putting it into perspective. Like you can't compare your day 1 to their day 100. So
Right.
I love that you just said that. And I love that you just said you played soccer in college. Didn't know that. So excited to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. What is one of your
gosh.
superpowers?
Actually, we were just kind of talking about this. There's like, okay. All right, I'm back. That was really weird. Everything started vibrating there. That was really weird.
All the notifications are going off.
Yeah. I would like, this is kind of a funny one. I think my superpower is not remembering things, because my teammates are always like, oh, well, what did you do last week? Like for like talking about programming. And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't remember. Like, they're like, oh, well, you did this, this, and this. I'm like, oh, right. So I think mentally for me, that's kind of my superpower, and like being able to kind of take it day by day. I don't know if that's because I'm just getting older and forgetting things, but I'll take it because I like that every day I come in, it's kind of like a new, I don't know, a new day.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great superpower because it kind of almost in a sense is like you can block out everything. So, and as an athlete for you, I feel like you're probably just in kind of like in the zone and in that flow state all the time when you train, which is an amazing quality to have. So the fact that you don't remember things and can kind of just like brush it off and move on, like if you have a bad day, it's okay. You have tomorrow. So I think that's a
Right.
great superpower to have. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll take it.
Yes. And then final rapid fire question. I may know the answer to this one. Who is your favorite athlete?
Oh my gosh. I mean, definitely Mia Hamm for sure. I mean, Abby Wambach is obviously up there. She's a badass. I mean, there's so many, like, I am an insane sports fan. So, I mean, keeping it with women, I mean, I would definitely say those two. But I mean, I was a huge Michael Johnson fan. When he when he was breaking all the world records in track, like that was glory days. And then obviously like Dominique Moceanu from the 1996 women's Olympic gymnast team, and Dominique Dawes. Oh my gosh, there's so many.
So many.
But-
I love it.
but-
So much inspiration for you,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
neat. As an athlete, it's always great to have role models. So that's super cool. And we'll talk about, because you are also a role model, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So, all right. So going from rapid fire questions into more of our deep questions, I want to know, who is Morghan King, and kind of walk us through your high school experience, college experience. You played soccer, and kind of how that got you to weightlifting and where you are today.
Oh my gosh, that's a long question, especially for how old I am. No, you know, I think realistically, like sports kind of always was the background in. Well, I mean, really the forefront in my life. You know, I was an okay student, but I always came back to sports, and you know, having an older brother, I wanted to be like him, and so I would do all of those sports. And then kind of, I think when I was 11 or 12, I ended up getting into select soccer, and that was kind of a big moment for me, kind of in taking just the next step to like kind of put your mind to something. And I have insanely supportive parents, and it was, I think that was the start of when I kind of had this longing to be great feeling, because I always made the B team, and I always felt like I was good enough to be on the A team, and sports, politics, all of that. And I mean, obviously there are, you know, so many great athletes that, you know, but that kind of was something that stuck with me all the time, that I was like, you know, oh, I'm always second. I'm always going to be on the B team. And then, you know, growing up, getting into high school, you know, I made the varsity team, which was awesome. And we ended up winning state, which was really cool. And I actually scored the winning goal to put us into the state tournament in a in a PK kick, which I had absolutely no idea at that point. The sixth kicker, when you go on, it's like goal for goal, basically. So if that sixth kicker makes it and then the other one misses, then you win. And so everybody like ran out on the like field, and I was like, what is happening?
You're like, what just happened?
Yeah. But I remember, because of, you know, being on the B team, that I would spend hours and hours after training kicking those PKs. And, you know, it allowed me to create this work ethic of, you know, if you do put the work in, and going back to that quote, like if you put the work in, it's going to come through, and it's going to come through. And then, you know, I was very, very lucky to be one of the girls that got, you know, a scholarship to go play at a Division II school in San Francisco for soccer. And, you know, at that point I was super burnt out. And, you know, my dad kind of forced me to do it, because he's like, you know, you'll regret it. And I'm obviously so thankful that he did. Like, I had an amazing 4 years in college and so much fun. I mean, San Francisco, come on, it's pretty awesome. But yeah, I think, you know, I just constantly had this longing to be something great. And And then once I graduated college with a graphic design degree, I was like, okay, I'm going to do the normal, like get out of college, try and get a job and like kind of move on with my life, move on from sports. Obviously, they were always going to be in my life, but I had kind of given up that competitive side. Um, and I got into triathlons, half marathons, because it was just really, I mean, that was kind of, endurance from soccer. Like it was just kind of the natural progression for me. And then I just got really bored training by myself, and I knew realistically I wasn't going to be competitive in it. I was pretty honest with myself in that. And once it started to not be fun, I once again was looking for something else. And that's when a friend introduced me to CrossFit. And then I started getting that competitive bug again, and I was like, okay, I'm not too old yet. Like, this is great. And then like 6 months in, I went to regionals, wanted to get stronger, and then that's when I mean, I had known the Olympic movements for weightlifting, but I didn't train in them. And so I wanted to get stronger, and our strength coach introduced me to it. And then 4 years later, I went to Rio, and it was very like, I mean, surreal to kind of have this. It was like, perfect timing kind of thing. We have insanely talented women that are in weightlifting now, and it's this next road up to 2020 is going to be so much harder because of the amount of women and the amount of talent that we do have. And obviously not that the talent was very low then. It was just with the growth of women in sports and strength sports, it's awesome to see. And that only pushes you to be better. And so I'm in this like fun stage of my life where I'm like, I've been able to see like where I can go, and now I can become the athlete that I've always wanted to be. And I know that deep inside that's kind of who I want to be, and like finding your voice and finding your spirit and who you are. It's been a pretty cool process to kind of see that through sports with me, because I always was like, I need to be something other than an athlete. And then I'm like, what, like, I have learned everything I possibly can in life through sports, and the ups and downs of it. And so yeah, I mean, I'm so thankful that I had parents that were constantly like, okay, if you don't like this sport, let's try this sport. They definitely helped me find a community that I've been able to grow and become a better person through it. So
I love that. I think that is such a beautiful story, because it really goes back to that first quote you shared with us in the beginning. And it's so true, because I think what's crazy is you had 6 months of CrossFit experience and then 4 months of training and weightlifting, and then you're at the Olympics. So I think it's crazy though, like all the time before that, I think all your experience with soccer and playing in high school and, in college, like it goes back to what you said, like you were putting in all that time, and then your triathlons as well too, like all that time, and all that time you were spending, it was building you into the athlete that you are today. And I think it's just so cool that it's paid off, maybe not in the way of soccer or triathlons, but now in weightlifting. And it's just cool how the way the world works, because it's maybe not what you envisioned, but here you are as an athlete, as a Olympic weightlifter. And I think that's so cool, kind of how your story has shifted over the years. So that's really cool. So let's talk about the Olympics. What was that experience like, and what was the process for training like to get to the Olympics?
Oh my gosh. So obviously the Olympics are amazing. And it was, I mean, everything that you see on the TV, like as a kid, I mean, I remember sitting in front of my grandparents' TV and watching it, and it's like the most magical experience, like, all these fireworks and these athletes. And it was like everything that I had dreamed of. And I was like, this is so surreal. It's crazy. And I remember stepping on stage, because I mean, we have in weightlifting, you have 3 attempts at the snatch and 3 attempts at the clean and jerk. And then at the Olympics, if you don't make a snatch, which is your first event, you don't actually get to go on. You basically are disqualified. And I just remember that feeling of like, okay, I've got to get this first lift in. And like, I mean, we're up there for maybe 30 seconds at a time, like, so it's not a lot of time. And so trying to remember that feeling, I remember one of our 2008 Olympian, Melanie Roach, she had told me, when you walk out and they say your name and introduce you, she's like, make sure you take in that moment because everything else is a blur. And I mean, she was not lying, because I think back and I'm like, okay, I remember like the felt carpet, the green carpet, like, but I couldn't tell you, like, I mean, I broke an American record and I remember screaming, but like, I remember screaming because I see the pictures of me, like you're in this zone and in this moment that like everything just flies by. And my competition was the day after opening ceremonies. And so, I mean, it's crazy to think that like, as soon as everybody was like excited and like ready to gear up for the Olympics, my Olympic experience was, almost done basically, which is crazy. But then, I was super, super excited because then I got to go and support all the other athletes and spend time with my family, and I know a lot of like the track athletes and stuff, they're at the end of the Olympics. So like, I don't know if they even get to experience a lot of it because, they're so focused. And so I was very lucky that I got both sides of that. I got to be, a competitor and a cheerleader for Team USA. So that was pretty exciting. And I mean, I'm that person that like, I will cry anytime I see like anybody on stage on the podium. Like, aww. Yeah, when our super girl, when she got bronze, I was like sobbing my eyes out. Like I was like, it's just the most beautiful thing. And because I mean, you know exactly like what goes into it and what people have put in, and it's just, I think the Olympics really, really brings that out. Like, in world championships and stuff like that, like it is beautiful, but like in a multi-sport event, like I think that crossover of just understanding the work that athletes put in is just, and their stories, their backgrounds, like it's just, I don't know. I mean, when they do all of the pieces on the athletes and what they've overcome, and it's super magical.
That is so cool. Yeah, we've talked to one other gal that was at the Olympics, and it's just like the coolest thing what they say. Like you see it on TV, but like in person, it's probably like 100 times more that, like 100 times more the emotions and everything. But the one thing that I find interesting that I've kind of gathered in just talking to you is kind of the importance of community. You seem like you're the type of person who loves community and you love rooting on other people. Like you said, when your time at the Olympics, it happened the day after, so then you got to be kind of the cheerleader for everyone else after. And with soccer, that's very much team sport community, and then with the triathlons, that was kind of more solo. And then I think that's kind of probably why you loved CrossFit, because CrossFit is such like a strong community. So what are some of the things that you would say is so important for like just building a strong community, whether it's on a team or in a certain sport? What do you think is like, I don't know, just some of the things that you try to do to help bring a sense of community to wherever you are?
Yeah, I think for me, like, and especially like I was very lucky growing up in team sports, is you do realize that everybody has like one common goal, whether it's, in weightlifting, it's individual, like you've got your own separate goals, but like the ultimate thing is going to the Olympics. And, and I think realizing that everybody's journey is separate, like, a lot of the times, like in weightlifting, it's like, oh, I can't tell them my program because that's my secret and all of this, but you can still be supportive in realizing that, we're all trying to become better people. And I think that's the deepest part of it is, we do obviously like, there is kind of this, like, I want to win and like, this very, very competitive spirit. And, I do sometimes see that, like, kind of, the catty side. I've obviously had it too. And, sometimes you need to use that as fuel, but eventually that fades. Right. And I think being able to share through the struggles, explain to people kind of like what's going on in your life, and like, oh, this is what's happening, so I didn't mean it that way. Like, I think communication is very huge when you go through, especially especially for weightlifting, because it is such a neurological sport. Like, I mean, I'm living with 3 of my teammates, so and we're all women, and so like we're gonna definitely go through those highs and lows together, and I'm gonna feel something, differently than somebody else is gonna feel throughout the day. And I think it's just being supportive through that, the good, the bad, and realizing that it's not personal, and that's the biggest thing that I think sports do teach you, or they should teach you, is that on the field and in the field of play, like, it's not personal. And I think that gets lost more with females than it does males, unfortunately. And because I think we just overanalyze absolutely everything. But it's fun to see, like, guys on the football field, like, they just absolutely crush each other, and then all of a sudden at the end they're like hugging each other, and you're like, what? Like, it's not as accepted in women's sports, or it's not done as well, I think, in women's sports, because we are perfectionists, and I think that's what also makes us insanely good athletes.
Right.
But I think, learning kind of just to be part of the community and don't feel alone or ashamed of like what you're feeling, or I think that was really important for me after the Olympics, because a lot of people don't talk about that kind of postpartum feeling of like this, you're on this journey for so long, and it culminates into this one massive event. And it's like, I had, obviously I had dreams of medaling. I had, I wanted to do this, 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 and this, and only 1 out of the 5 things happened, So it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh. And, that's why I'm here today. And that's why I'm going towards 2020, because I still have goals that I didn't meet. And, but it's that kind of shame feeling that, like, I didn't feel like I could reach out to my community, and in reality, it just kind of fell back on me of like, I just need to speak out. I need to talk more about it. I need to, know that I do have people in my life. I have teammates in my life that are willing to listen. And even if it's just listening, they don't need to, respond. But just having that support system is super, super key. And I've been very, very lucky to have that in my life. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I think obviously communication is definitely key with anything, but especially in community. And one thing that you brought up too, which I didn't really know before, is that you said that weightlifting is a neurological sport, and you kind of talked about the whole postpartum thing after the Olympics. So talk about like weightlifting as a sport, and like, why is it such a neurological sport, and maybe talk about, any of the stigmas that are associated, especially with women in weightlifting.
Yeah. Well, the stigma obviously is that we're just massive humans that are just like super muscly, and I mean, that's definitely not true. And the cool thing about weightlifting is it is for everybody. Like, anyone can try it, anyone can do it. All walks of life, which is really awesome. And we have body weight categories too. So it's not like, I think the hard part for me in CrossFit was that, I'm 5 foot and 110 pounds, like going against a girl that's 5'8", and 175, like, us moving the weight is very, very different. And so that's kind of what brought me to weightlifting, is I did feel that inclusion, and I didn't feel like so, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say ostracized, like just kind of out of place, you know? And I really felt at home that I was like, okay, this is like almost fair. Like, I felt like it was fair, I guess, is the more easier way. But it's kind of absurd, but yeah. And just kind of that, the strength aspect that like you're never ever gonna like be strong enough. I loved that. I loved that feeling of perfection. It was like you can always add, and we talk in kilos, which is 2.2 pounds per kilo. You can always add a kilo on, you know, and so it's like it's this constant like, okay, well, last week I did this, today I'm going to do this, and neurologically, weightlifting is hilarious because one, your body always hurts. Like there's not a time where like I get out of bed and I'm like, oh yay, nothing hurts. This is so great. It's gonna be a great day. It's like,
oh my gosh.
Well, yeah. But I think that also means something's working. At least I like to tell myself that. But neurologically, you know, it's funny that we'll be like, example, last Friday, after a really heavy training session, my brain just completely shut off after. It was like my adrenaline was racing, like I was going like, ah, and then like we get in the car and I'm not kidding you, it was like, and I was like, what has happened? And my roommate actually was like, are you okay? I was like, I'm just hungry and tired. And like, you don't really realize like what's going on with your body. And it's funny. It's like, you almost have this like out of body experience where you like can't control yourself and you're like, oh my gosh. And it's like that almost feeling of like overtraining, but you know, you've just pushed your body to the limit and then, you know, you're going to go to sleep and recover and do it all over again. But because we don't have, like, I don't really sweat that much in training. And like, that was always, you know, a feeling in soccer when you were sweating, you were exhausted, you were breathing really heavy. That was a sign of like, okay, I worked really hard. Where in weightlifting, you know, we do a lift and then we sit down for like 2 minutes and then we do a lift and we sit down. So it's a very, very different. And like, you know, you're on stage for, I mean, the snatch takes less than a second. So I could tell you the second I pull it off the ground if I'm going to make it or not. And so like that like knowledge of just knowing that is like neurologically like so crazy in your brain because you're like, oh, okay, cool. I just spent the last 6 months training for this and I'm going to miss this lift. Like, you know, and so then you have to go back and you have to reassess and get your mind right again and go, you know, okay, well, that didn't work out. Why didn't that work out? And then, you know, you work through it in your brain and you have 2 more attempts, luckily, to go out there. But, you know, and then sometimes you don't make a snatch. And so then you're out of the game. So, you know, and it's always like looking back in hindsight, oh, I could have done this and this and this, but, you know, it's a game of inches. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an insane sport. It's like a chess match. It's pretty crazy.
I know. That is so crazy. I mean, of course, I know kind of had an idea of some of that stuff, but really didn't realize how much mentally you go through when you're weightlifting. So that's super crazy. But, and especially too, talking about just like the mental game and mindset, is there anything that you do like every day or every month, every week, whatever it may be, to just kind of get your mind right as an athlete, or any pieces of advice you can give to other athletes for kind of just like making sure that you're in like the, you know, a positive mental state or good frame of mind whenever you're competing?
Yeah, well, I've been working a lot on that recently. Coming back from the Olympics was really hard because I think I had this, you know, who am I moment of who am I? I'm now an Olympian, right? Like I have to own that, and people are now looking at you a little different. You know, it's not that you're this Olympic hopeful and you're just, you know, the top in your weight class. It's now you've got this title, and I had this huge just this moment of like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to be staring at me on stage, and what if I fail? And I mean, I would say for the last, I mean, almost 2 years, like right after the Olympics when I came back, I was suffering through that because, you know, I was just so worried about what people thought of me. And then, you know, you have to go back and realize that it's the journey that people like of you and who you are as a person. It's not necessarily that you become this, you know, this Olympian, and like it doesn't change you, or it shouldn't change you really. And so for me, like I was really before the Olympics, I do a bunch of yoga, I did meditation, and I kind of got away from that a little bit just because my mind was super clouded, and I had this like brand. I was like, oh, I need to be a brand. I need to, I need to build off of and in reality, like that's just not who I am. And I just like, I'm still an athlete. I'm still a weightlifter. I still, want to, do the goals that I had set out to do. And so I have gotten back into, I've always meditated at night. Like that's always been a thing. Like, I have 2 apps that I use. It's Calm and Slumber. Which I love. And then there's also another free one that's called Guided Mind that is awesome. And so I've been doing that more often. Just kind of like taking time for myself, I think is really, really important. Because, I have 2-a-day practices. So like in the morning I get up and then I go and train, I come back, I eat, and I read, I rest, catch up on emails, and then I go back to train and come back, eat, and it's just this constant, just this routine that you can get into and forget about yourself, and I think that was the biggest thing for me is like making sure that I had time to breathe, being able to have other hobbies that I've wanted to do. And, cause you get so pigeonholed sometimes in training and then you feel like you can't do anything else. And that's not the case. And going back to being like neurologically, like so tired, you're like, I've been trying to play the guitar for like 2 years and like my hands hurt so bad. So like in between training, like I'm like, I can't do it. and that was like really frustrating for me. But like in reality, if I really wanted to, I could, take the time and do it. And so that's kind of been a goal of mine is like, actually, it's really funny. My New Year's resolution was to write more to-do lists. Because I forget everything.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I'm the opposite. I need to not write to-do lists. I write too many to-do lists.
Well, and I'm so scatterbrained that I'll be like, what did I just do for 2.5 hours? I was like, Morgan, you were sitting in your closet, and it's like, so like if I write down like things that I need to do or like, Morgan, this will only take 15 minutes. Like it really, really helps me to kind of get back into that me space. And I think that's really, really important for athletes that, we just constantly are pushing our bodies to the max, and just having that time to breathe is huge. So.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I think meditation, yoga is so important. I don't meditate a lot. I'm trying to, but I just can't sit still. But yoga is the thing for me. Like that's where I meditate, and I know like it just grounds me. So I love that you said that, because I think anything where you can kind of just like release your thoughts and just not worry about all the things that you have to do in the day, just yoga, meditation, journaling, reading. I think those are so important and like you said, getting out of the pigeonhole of training and what you're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, you're not just the athlete. You're not just your sport. You can do other things, and it's going to be okay.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. And I think just getting like, I think there's a lot of like stigma of like that. Oh, it's like super hippie. Like, oh, she's journaling. She's meditating. It's not. And it's funny when people do get into it, they're like, oh, this is what I've been missing. And I mean, it's definitely tough to get into it. Like you said, like meditation is really tough to sit there and like, there's like a couple of the ones that I do from Calm are like 10 minutes. I'm like, I can do this for 10 minutes, like it's just like breathe. And then it's over. I'm like, okay, I did it. At least I took the time. And it's just like even any sport, like this, it takes a little bit longer to get into it, but once you do it, like it becomes a little bit easier. And, and I always get that way with yoga too, where I'm like, oh, how much longer? And then I'm like, oh, I love this,
Totally. And it's so true. And just with the whole mental thing too, it's just a matter of like you said, your app, it's only 10 minutes long. So you have to think, okay, I can do something for 10 minutes. It is only 10 minutes. Like, so kind of just pushing past your own mind and just doing it. So I love that. So let's talk about two. You are an athlete role model for the Youth Olympic Games. I think that's so cool. So kind of talk about your role, what you do for the Youth Olympic Games. And just talk about your experience with that.
Okay. So I was invited, I would say last summer, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was, to go to the Youth Olympic Games,
Mm-hmm.
which were in Buenos Aires in Argentina in October. And I was actually invited by the IWF, which is the International Weightlifting Federation. And then they work for the IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee. And I kind of was just at a point in my life where, like, even if I had would have made worlds in November, I was still gonna go. Like, I just knew that. So you have to be an elite athlete in order to be invited. So you have to be like a
Mm-hmm.
current athlete. So I knew realistically I would never get the chance kind of again to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really, really big part of why I wanted, like, as an Olympian, I wanted to kind of be able to inspire the youth. And just, I don't know, with social media these days, like, your reach is so much bigger. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I got invited, I was so excited. I was so excited. And just, like, in that point of my life, I was just kind of down in the dumps, and I needed kind of a wake up call, and, like, just, I don't know, it was perfect timing for me to go. And I went there, and our other weightlifter, actually, he wasn't able to come, and so it was just me as the, like,
Mm-hmm.
weightlifting. Yeah, and I ended up working a ton, and it was like very long hours, and I was training in between. And but it was, honestly, it was the most rewarding experience I think I've ever done. And I was just like, it was funny because a lot of the youth kids have actually been weightlifting longer than me, which I kind of laughed about. um, but all of the people, even the people that came and watched, like, people wanted to take pictures with me. And then, like, the volunteers that were working with me, they were, a lot of them, well, actually, one of my volunteers, he's from almost Patagonia area in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
He drove to the Olympics, to Brazil. They drove 50 hours to go
Oh my
experience it.
gosh.
Yeah. He got the Rio tattoo and the Olympic rings tattooed on him. I don't have any of those. And he was like, "You don't understand, like, the Olympic movement." He's like, "Just you being you, like, inspiring us to be able to, like." I was
Wow.
absolutely blown away. Like, it does, like, being in America, it doesn't occur to me that I can't do anything I want to do.
Mm.
And obviously I'm blessed with parents, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that, the support system. But, like, some people can't even fathom to be able to even go to the Olympics as an
Mm.
athlete. And I was insanely humbled knowing that. And just, like, they were like, "You just being you is really cool." And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh my goodness," and and I think just being a good representative for the sport of weightlifting, like, I was able to sit down and talk with Thomas Bach for, like, a whole session. He ended up staying, which is super awesome, and explained to him about weightlifting, and even, like, the chess match that goes on in the back. And just being involved as, not as an athlete,
Mm-hmm.
as part of just an ambassador to your sport, and to sports in general. Like, we got to work with a bunch of the kids out there and, like, teach them what weightlifting was. And it was mostly girls, which was even awesomer.
Mm.
Like, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
there was a girl, I think she may have been 3, and she was just the
Oh.
sassiest little thing ever. And I was like, my heart, it's just bursting. It was so fun to, like, I don't know. It was like a huge wake up call for me, because
Mm-hmm.
once again, you get so pigeonholed, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, I have to do these, I have to hit these numbers. If I don't do this, da, 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 da. And then it's like, Morgan, you are literally living the dream right now,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and I can complain about, oh, I don't make enough money, like, all this stuff. But in reality, like, that's not really what matters and why I'm doing it. And so,
Mm-hmm.
just being, I don't know, just inspiring kids, and everybody else to just kind of, like, follow their dreams. And it was an amazing experience. Like, I would attribute that to probably the reason, like, I would say, take back my life, from
Mm-hmm.
what it was after the Olympics. Like, that was a huge moment. I remember actually writing it down in my journal, and being like, this is why you're doing it, Morgan. It isn't always for the fame and the glory, and winning. It's a lot more than that.
Right.
And you're just one person in a cog, so
That is so cool. I love that. What a
yeah.
cool experience. And
Yeah.
what it's like some advice, especially that you would give to the young female wrestlers, like the three, I mean, maybe not the 3-year-old because she's probably too young to understand,
Right.
but what's like
Right.
some of the pieces of advice that you gave to the young female athletes that were there?
I mean, honestly, that, breaking down that barrier of being strong. And I mean, even being like in weightlifting, just being strong isn't it? You have to be strong mentally. And I think it's really, really important for them to learn. And even my thing for weightlifting is you don't necessarily have to do it as a sport, but as an accessory to other sports, it's incredible. And I think if we can get females into that and breaking down those stereotypes of oh, you're going to get so bulky and all of that, is huge for women. Like if I would have known about weightlifting, oh my goodness gracious. If I would have, sorry, if I would have known about like weightlifting going into college, like I was 93 pounds going into college. Like
Wow.
I was very, very tiny. And, I think that would have helped, me off. Getting looks at maybe Division I schools because obviously they don't want a 93 pound like I'm gonna get pushed over, and so I think it's just breaking down those stereotypes and that you don't necessarily have to be in a singlet and do all these meets because that's intimidating. It's very, very intimidating being out there by yourself, but if you can use it for other sports that you feel more confident in, like it's only going to bring you more confidence.
Right. I love that. That's so awesome. What about any advice for like coaches and parents out there? So, because I know you said you had an awesome support system. So kind of like what have you learned from your experience with your parents that, supported you and kind of pushed you to play soccer in college? What's your best advice to the other coaches and parents out there?
There is a very fine line in pushing your children to become better athletes, and but it's also you need to make sure that your kids love what they're doing. I think for me, not being a single sport athlete was huge. It kept my curiosity, and I personally, when I do have kids, like I want them to be able to try everything. I think that's really, really important because that allows them to make the decisions for themselves. And now, especially, with female athletes and colleges being able to fund more and more athletes, like it's not necessarily just the soccer, the softball,
Right.
it's all sports that are getting funding. And I think that's really, really powerful. But I also do think, you do need to be pushed. And I'm very much like one of those athletes that like, I was always like funny, like always had to run extra lines of some sort because I was goofing off, so you do need to kind of like hone in and make sure that your athletes and your the kids are focused. But I think making sure that they love it is the first and foremost thing because I even got to a point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, and nobody had pushed me to do anything, so we do get burned out no matter what. And I think, being very, very supportive. And like, I mean, my mom is very supportive, but my dad is definitely like the sports one. Like my mom is like, I can't even watch you. I think I'm going to throw up every single time. Whereas my dad was like, well, you looked good. And I don't know, you didn't, like this looked a little off. I'm like, yeah, Dad. So my dad is definitely my sports guy. And what he used to say, actually I have a really funny story about this. He's probably going to kill me. But one time in soccer, he was the dad that would always yell. He was my coach growing up. And then when I made select soccer and all of that, it kind of, fizzled. And then he would always be the guy that would be like, you got to buy a ticket if you're going to stand and watch. Like, if I was standing in the game, and he would like scream. And I forget what he said one time, and I was literally running down the side of the field, and he was saying something to me, and I stopped mid-run, and I went, "Shut up."
Oh.
And from that day on, it was like, okay, let's go.
Oh my gosh,
He was
that
so
is
embarrassed.
hilarious.
So there is definitely a fine line of like, obviously he was my biggest supporter, but he also like was trying to find that balance of like pushing me so that I would play my hardest. And but yeah, he's like, I'll never forget that. He was like, I've never been so embarrassed.
That is, you know what's so funny you just said that, because I have a very similar story, and my dad was very similar, like pushed me probably a little too hard. And there was one time, because I played golf and I was in a tournament, and he was just like, I could just tell from his body language that he was so upset with me and how I was playing. And then finally I like made this super long putt for a birdie, and I turn around and look right at him, and I'm like, how you like that putt, Dad? And he was like, I liked it a lot. Like, and just was like mortified, and just like, yeah, same thing. Like for the rest of the tournament, he was like pretty much, straight edge, clapping. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine in golf too. He was probably mortified.
Oh
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Well, and because of course it's like me and I think 2 or 3 other girls, and then like maybe a marshal and like a couple other parents. So there's not many people, so everyone heard that was there. For sure. So
oh my
I'm
gosh,
glad I'm not the only one, and he's not the only one that has done something like that.
Right. I love it. That's so amazing.
Too funny. Okay, Morgan, well, what is next for you?
Oh my gosh. So next is we have Pan Am Championships, which is in Guatemala City. So that's at the end of April. And that is one of our qualification system is insane to make the Olympics. We have to basically compete every 3 months internationally for 18 months, so 6 times. And you have to have 1 gold event, and there's usually 2 gold events per year. So we only have 3 left, 4 left. And so I made that one, and that's this one coming up. So that's like kind of a big check off the list.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you. I'm excited. But yeah, so we have that, and then we've got a couple of national meets, and then several international meets. So we travel kind of all around the world to crazy places, because weightlifting is definitely in some fun places that you probably wouldn't always visit. So it's fun to go see them. But our Worlds is in Thailand in September.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so everyone definitely wants to make that team.
Definitely.
So that's the goal. Yeah, that's the big goal for the end of the year. But we try and space out our competitions so we can train a lot longer, because strength training obviously takes a bit longer to like peak. And so a lot of the meets that we'll be doing, or competitions I should say, are like we'll be kind of training through them, and then we'll drop, and then we'll peak for a big one, and then kind of drop off. So yeah, it really depends on my coach and what he decides and what he thinks is best. But yeah, those are Guatemala City in April, and then Thailand in September are the big ones. So
awesome. So exciting. Okay, so wrapping up, couple more questions for you. What is something you would tell your younger self?
It gets better.
I love that.
Everything. I mean, and we talked about this earlier, that you just don't realize like how the universe is kind of just conspiring with you, and I did have the dream of becoming an Olympian my whole entire life. I just didn't know what sport, obviously, and I had thought, well, figure skating, can't do that. Gymnastics, that's out. Soccer, that's out. And then I found weightlifting. So I think it's, don't give up. And if you do really feel like you're born to be great, like don't give that part up. So
that's awesome. I love that. Yeah. Okay, so your final words and advice to our listeners, and also where can everyone find you?
Ooh, final advice. Oh, that's really tough. I would really say, like, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. It definitely sucks a lot of the time. But it's those, few and far between moments that make everything worth it. And I think, grabbing a hold of your community and being able to have them for support, when you do feel those moments that you are less than, is really important. And I think, I've been so lucky to have the support of, USA Weightlifting, my teammates. I finally have a team, which I'm super excited. This is the first time. Just dig deep and get through it. It's worth it. It's worth it in the end. And, better or worse, you'll have a really, really good lesson, and you will have those moments of greatness. I promise. And then basically I'm King Morghan on like every platform with an
Love
H.
it. I love it. Your name is so good. It's just,
Thank you.
I mean, the fact that your last name is King, I just think is so cool.
I know. I got pretty lucky.
Yes, you did. All right. Final question for you, Morghan. What does playing like a girl mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Playing like a girl I believe is just being you. And being able to develop that curiosity and that, that comfort inside of yourself, and knowing that you're going to go and give it your all every second of every day. And we are very lucky that we are perfectionists, and that's our strength. And I think digging deep and knowing that is a huge reason of why I like to play like a girl and become myself.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Morghan, for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I loved it.
All right, Plag listeners, please make sure to share this episode with a friend who you think will enjoy this podcast. I'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts on this episode, so head to iTunes to leave a review. You can also send any questions or topics you'd like us to cover by sending us a DM on Instagram at PlayLikeAGirlMP. We want to know what you want to hear. Before you go, screenshot this episode and tag us at PlayLikeAGirlMP so we know you're listening alongside us. Thank you so much for listening to episode 29 of Play Like a Girl. We hope you come back for more. Once again, I'm Nikki B, and remember to never stop playing like a girl. Or weightlifting like a girl.
You play ball like a girl!